Hello, everybody, and welcome to the final video of our weapons mini-series. We definitely saved the best for last, the Intel class. Now, for those of you that want to know about the starting weapons, we talked about that in a previous episode, which is episode number 2. Make sure to click the link in the upper right-hand corner if you want to watch that. But this is going to be all of the Intel weapons from the Glittering Mines to Vexor's Tower. But we're going to have a little bit of an extra bonus for you guys. Because we've now gone through all of the weapons at this point, we're going to talk about some really critical combinations in order for you guys to beat the game easily. Now, what we always want to go back to is the fundamentals, which are the abilities of the weapons. Now, we talked about this in great length in our first episode. So again, if you guys want to go back and revisit what those top ones are and why we came up with those conclusions, click on the link in the upper right. Now, the top ones are Rush, Reset, Heavy Attack, Speed Down with Damage, Splash, and Focus Restore. You know why Intel is so amazing? It pretty much has all of these. So let's get going in on this. So when you're looking for intelligence weapons, as you're heading into King's Maze, as I had just mentioned, Intelligence Heroes has all of the top abilities. You're looking to do heavy damage going into King's Maze. You also would love to get a Focus Restore weapon. Focus Restore is fantastic to be able to get your other heroes up so they have the ability to be able to do either high damage output or even to be able to use some of their utility to help out their team. Simple. Make sure you at least have Party Heal at this point. Now, you can get Party Heal in two different ways. You can either get it through a talent weapon, but primarily we end up getting it through an intelligence weapon. But either way, make sure you have one in your pocket. AoE reset after King's Maze. Let's just lay that one on the table for right now because we're going to talk a lot about AoE reset. Rush or AoE Rush. Another really high level utility that can help you dominate the end of the game. And AoE Shock. Now we talked a little bit about this with the other weapons, but there's one particular weapon that you would like to have, especially on the intelligence, that does an AoE Shock that helps you defeat the Fire Revenant at the end of the game. Is there anything that you guys want to bring up before we get ramped up into these weapons?
Just a little bit of corrections. There are not just two ways of getting Party Heal. Talent is one, intelligence is one. There's also items that are not weapons that can do it. So Pipe Diffuser and Gathering Bonnet can do two Party Heal. I believe that was the only thing. What about you, Mike? Do you have anything to add?
No, not really.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, I should have put an asterisk on there. For weapons, the only way to get Party Heal is through a talent or an intel weapon.
I'm sure that's what you meant, but you just it's all right.
That's a good way to start though. So let's get going here. All right, so tier 2 weapons. Right off the top, you see a very high damage output weapon, which is the Goat Wizard Staff. It does 20 damage with a heavy strike. Now, as you can tell, it's very similar to what you would get with a strength weapon. It has a minus 25% accuracy when you do use the heavy attack. What's also nice to it too is it also freezes on top of that extra damage. You have the U-Staff in the second position. Now, the U-Staff is going to be one of those that you want to have over the course of the game because it has Party Heal to it. Magic Wand. Magic Wand is a single-handed weapon. Now, you are not able to get this on console, and unfortunately, every single wand that we talk about here is not on console. So when you talk about 3 and 4, those kind of get wiped off entirely. So what you want to be mainly trying to get your hands on is this Goat Wizard Staff to start off. Now, I do want to put a little bit extra information out there for you guys. There are side quests that can get you this Goat Wizard Staff. since when you get past the glittering mines, there's going to be 5 different opportunities for you guys to do side quest, and primarily you want to reduce chaos. There's going to be 2 pieces of equipment that you mainly want to be looking for if you can do them in the side quests. One is Boots of Might, which I talked about in the armor video, and the second one is going to be the Goat Wizard Staff. You're definitely going to want to unlock that as one of your side quests if you get an opportunity to get it, because this is a really good weapon. Anything you guys would like to add with these weapons?
Yeah, the Goat Wizard Staff is a lore store unlock weapon, so you got to purchase it from your lore store. But because it's a lore store item, it's made available to you in the tier 2 time frame right after the Glittering Mines. You can find it in a night market, but where you find it more often, as Daddy was saying, is as a item side quest from one of the towns. The power of the Goat Wizard Staff is on par with the top tier 3 weapons for intelligence. So getting your hands on a Goat Wizard Staff right after leaving the Glittering Mines is super huge. Highly recommend doing that. The U Staff, it's here because it has single target rush, and rush is one of the things you're looking for from intelligence weapons. So if you weren't able to get a knotted staff from the tier 1 time frame before the Glittering Mines, then picking up this for its single target rush is really good to have. Plus, it's also a party heal weapon. So if you didn't get party heal from your intelligence weapons from the previous tier, you've got it here. The Mage Wand and the Starfire Wand, they have really good powered abilities. Vaporize does a lot of damage from that Mage Wand. So you have it in your back pocket, the ability to hit really, really hard with that weapon. And these allow you to wear a shield. When you're going through Act 2 and you're going through the King's Maze, you're going to be running into a lot of enemies that are going to cause conditions, burning, bleeding, poison, disease, all kinds of conditions. The ability to throw a shield on that can potentially give you those immunities, like a shaman shield from the Lost Civilization DLC that adds immunities to you, can really, really help. So that's what I have to say about these. Sheldon?
Yeah, no, that's pretty much it. If you have a feather shield or a shaman shield, or I think it's called warrior shield, they basically the new DLC shields that provide speed and immunities. Those are great. Those are great in addition with these wands, so that you're immune to all the crap while you're able to do a really high damage. Because all the wands, for the most part, all have at least one really high damage attack. So it is nice to have these wands in your back pocket.
But generally speaking, I'm almost always looking for the Goat Wizard Staff because it's so potentially easy to get. Any one of the towns that I get to might be making that available as an item side quest. And once I pick up the Goat Wizard Staff, there's really no need for me to purchase any of these other weapons in the tier 2.
Yeah, and the other thing to kind of keep in mind too, when you look at the Goat Wizard Staff, like compared to the Mage Wand, of course that Mage Wand does have 2 different levels of increased attack, right? It's got the Vaporize that brings you up to 27, and then it has, it has Surge that gets you up to 27, Vaporize that gets you up to 33. But you see the accuracy, minus 30%, 45%, and the reason why it doesn't compare that well to the Goat Wizard Staff is its base damage is at 15, whereas the Goat Wizard Staff is at 20. So you can do 30 maximum damage while also freezing with only a minus 25% accuracy. So you can pump a lot of focus, of course, into these wands, which are nice to be able to do really, really heavy amounts of damage. But this Goat Wizard Staff does pretty much an equivalent amount of damage at the same time. So that's why that's a really good weapon. So going into rounding off the rest of these weapons, the one thing that you'll notice is actually a lot of them are actually pretty decent. So the Goat Wizard Staff does kind of stand above all of these, and I think it's clear, like we need to make that clear distinction. But Frost Wand, again, really good weapon. Scholar Stick, a good weapon. Frost Staff is decent. You start getting a little bit of a drop off here, but even if you get Enchanted Broom at this point, right when you get outside of the Glittering Mines and you're able to get some of these weapons here, it's actually not that bad. It's just there is that next level with the Goat Wizard Staff. Of course, what you'll see a lot of times too with these particular weapons, power up attack on the Frost Wand, power up attack with the Scholar's Wand, power up attack with the Frost Staff. And the Intelligence Hero does become actually a very lethal enemy. And then when we went back and talked about, the Talent Hero that is able to do single rush, if you get a really decent weapon on your Strength Hero and you get one of these really decent weapons on your Intelligence Hero, you can actually balance when you want to rush the Intelligence Hero if you want to be able to do magic damage to someone that has a lot of armor, or you can balance that by just giving your rush to your Strength Hero that's going up against something that has high resistance. So it actually gives you some flexibility on if you do get a really good weapon on either or of those characters, you now do have some flexibility with how much maximum damage you can do to the enemy. Anything that you guys would like to add?
All of these weapons here, all the way out down to the Enchanted Broom, these are all improved weapons over what you're going to be leaving Act 1 with. I mean, you're probably going to have a 9 damage lightning staff, maybe a mage book or a knotted staff from Act 1. Probably on the top end, you might have the ethereal dagger because it's 11 damage. Every single one of these weapons is going to be an improvement over those things. Don't delay in getting an upgrade. If you see a scholar stick in the very first town you get to, which is probably Perid, and you have the money for it, get it. It's going to supply you with so much more damage output than you have exiting from the Glittering Mines.
Yeah, you definitely don't want to gamble your weapons. We do, I mean, this list, yes, we prioritize which weapons are better than others, but that doesn't mean if you see weapon 8 that you don't get it because it's not on the top end of the list. If you see any of these weapons, you want to pick it up right away. You don't want to gamble your weapons, because if you see a scholar stick in Perid and then you continue throughout the game and none of the other towns have anything else in Perid, and none of the towns have a goat wizard staff item quest, you just shot yourself in the foot. Like, always get your weapon upgrades.
What he means by don't gamble it is when you leave the Glittering Mines, you have 15 rounds before the next town refresh occurs. And when that next town refresh occurs, you're going to end up in tier 3. It's very possible that none of the towns will have intelligence weapons after that refresh. So if you didn't get this intelligence weapon while it was in tier 2, while you were in that 15 rounds, when you get into tier 3 and none of the towns have intelligence weapons, that's why he's saying you've shot yourself in the foot. You didn't pick up the weapon when you had the chance. So if you see one upon leaving the Glittering Mines, get it right away. Mm-hmm. It's always going to be an improvement over what you have. And then you might find something better once the 15 round town refresh occurs and you get into the tier 3 weapons, but maybe you don't. So it's always good to have this in your back pocket right off the bat so you don't have to worry.
This 15 round refresh will also screw you over in the Goat Wizard Staff item quest as well. The Goat Wizard Staff item quest only exists within the 15 rounds after mines. Once the 15 rounds have passed, the towns will no longer have Goat Wizard Staff item quest, so you even lose out on that weapon as well.
That's a great point.
That's also a good point, because that means you really need to get to the 5 towns that are in those 3 biomes after the Glittering Mines as quickly as possible. You need to get to Perid, Caselli's Watch, Devil's Wharf, and then whether you have the Poison Bog or the Burning Forest, you need to get to those towns as quickly as possible as well, so that you can see if you can get that Goat Wizard staff. Because you only have 15 rounds to get that, essentially for no cost. It's free by just doing it as an item side quest.
Yeah,
it's not even a fight. It's not even a fight. It's literally you summon it, you pick it up, done. No fight required. It's literally free.
Yeah, in your case, in order to be able to maximize what you do in those first 15 rounds, the 3 of us did an entire Masters run, kind of showing you how to do proper pathing in order to make that happen. So you can maximize your potential to be able to get some of these weapons. Make sure you lower the camps that you attack and such. So if you want to make sure that you guys watch that entire pathing video that we did, so you guys can get a sense of how to maximize those first 15 rounds after the Glittering Mines. So let's kind of round out the rest of these weapons here. You start seeing a little bit of a drop off here as you move on down. Always keep in mind that the base weapons that you would probably come out of the Glittering Mines is around 9 damage, unless you get the dagger that is at 11. So your Fire Wand does 10, but of course we put that a little bit more at the top because you have the power up ability that you can do there. It also does give you an additional max focus, and there's a crit chance there. It also allows for you to do reset. So again, we do value reset so that very highly, and that's why we have Fire Wand at the top. And then you get Bamboo Wand, power up again with Pierce, Apprentice Tome, 13 damage with Pierce. Bamboo Staff just does 15 damage. Nothing really crazy to talk about there. As we kind of just keep moving on down, the Water Wand at 12, Frozen Tome at 12, and then the Water Tome at 12. These all just do kind of secondarily a few things here and there. Of course, the Water Wand makes you wet, can do a little bit of restore focus. Frozen Tome does freeze, and the Water Tome does a little bit of restore focus. Anything that you guys want to highlight over the last like 7 weapons?
No, actually, I prefer not to pick these up. If I can find something from the first 8, it's much better than any of these bottom 7.
I wanted to add that 2 of these weapons that are at the bottom list here are focus restore weapons, which is a little odd because we do consider focus restore to be one of the top abilities. The reason we don't have them highly yet is because they only do 2 focus to your party or to a single character. And the reason that's not really helpful yet is when you're doing any fight, you should expect your party to take damage, enough damage where you need the in, and the in will just give you your focus back from inning, which makes focus restore 2 kind of irrelevant. And that's kind of why we have focus restore weapons, at least in tier 2, this low. It's because the focus restore, for the most part, doesn't actually help you yet. It's too low of an amount.
What I'm really looking for is that heavy attack from these magic weapons. I want to have a heavy attack physical attacker, which I'll get from my strength hero, and I want to have a heavy attack magic user, which is my intelligence hero. So when I'm not looking for the focus restore so much as I'm looking for the heavy magic attack from these weapons. And you're going to get that from the top 8. You're not really going to get that as much from these bottom 7.
Yeah, heavy is better than the focus restore. Exactly.
Yeah. And that's kind of what we mentioned. You know, you're looking to do a lot of damage heading into King's Maze. Now let's go off and do tier 3 weapons here. So this, of course, jumps back up. But if you remember us talking about Goat Wizard Staff, that was a 20 damage weapon. So what you see here in the tier 2 or tier 3 realm is now you get the opportunity for a Starfish Staff. Starfish Staff, of course, does the most damage, so it's at 21. It does have a heavy attack. It wets, and it does focus restore. Now, I'm going to let these guys run a little bit on why this is considered such a good weapon because of the focus restore aspects, because there's some very interesting combinations you can do with some of this focus restore. I'm going to kind of chime in a little bit on my own experience. I feel Starfish Staff is the best weapon to have when you're playing the Frost Adventure. There are some other weapons that you automatically can get in that particular mode, and Starfish Staff can just absolutely make that team just obliterate your way all the way up through the end Frostbite's peak. And so this Starfish Staff is really paramount to be able to focus up the guys that can do a ton of damage. Now on the second one, we got Fire Staff. This again, 20 damage weapon. It does a power up attack, but it also does single reset. So this is a great weapon to have too. These by far in the tier 3 or the top 2, these are probably the best ones that you have here, along with the third one. This third one does single target rush. Now, primarily you're going to be using single target rush with your talent hero, but of course it's dependent on how your team composition is. Maybe you're not running talent. Maybe there's a reason that you're going to want to have this single target rush depending on how your composition is within your team. But the Mage's Tome allows you to do that single target rush while also doing 16 damage and being able to do piercing damage. Thunder Tome is a 15 damage weapon. Again, this is where you kind of start getting a drop off in tier 3. It's nice that it does shock, but that's about the only extra thing that it gives you there. Anything, of course, you guys are going to want to talk about Starfish Staff here for a little bit. So why don't you guys kind of chime in here and talk about that weapon?
Starfish Staff, the reason it's number one is because of the power-up attack. You want the heavy magic damage, so that's satisfying that. But the bonus is it gives you focus restore at a really good level. It does 4 focus restore to individual target. This is where the water wand didn't quite cut it. The water wand had focus restore as well, but it wasn't going to give you as much focus as this thing can. Sheldon?
Yeah, so Starfish Staff is the ability to restore focus gives you so much flexibility in having to not do certain things. What I mean by that is a Starfish Staff's restore focus is pretty much equivalent to a meditation service in a town. And by the time you get this weapon, meditation service is around 32 gold. So every time you use Calm 2, you're saving yourself 32 gold every single time you do that skill. So that weapon ends up becoming a huge economic advantage to you with that skill alone. It's basically free golden roots, and those two cost money. So you end up saving a lot of money with that skill. If you don't want to think of it in a money perspective, then you could just think of it as a safety perspective. You can focus other people so that they can get their crucial skills off, so you take less damage. Taking less damage means you have to use God's Visions endless, which is also money as well. So even if you're not focusing on the money aspect, you still end up saving money in that regard as well. There's also advanced things you could do with it. I don't know if we want to talk about that or not. Mike, do you want to mention at least a little bit on the OP things you can do with Focus Restore?
This particular weapon, if I got the Goat Wizard Staff from tier 2, this is the one weapon I would actually upgrade to, even though it's only doing 1 additional damage, because of the Focus Restore. The ability to have 4 Focus Restore allows you to ambush essentially at a free cost, because what an ambush does is it takes what would be a battle that might throw 3 enemies together, and maybe you don't want to have 3 enemies together, you want to just fight 1 enemy. You can use your focus to guarantee that you get an ambush off, and that gives you 1 extra attack during the ambush. So with that 1 extra attack during the ambush, you just focus restore the focus you just spent to get the ambush off in the first place. And now you're down to a normal combat with just 1 enemy instead of 3. So it makes your ability to get through difficult zones where, it's like, God, I really need to get through this area, but if I attack him, he's going to pull in a Bison Tor and a Thunderhawk, and I don't want either one of those things in my battle. It's like, well, Starfish Staff just allows me to do a free ambush and just fight that 1 enemy all by itself. So it's really, really powerful in that way. If you combine that with the ability to have other characters resetting that 1 enemy. So if you have your talent hero who's using a Thuribow, and the Thuribow is doing single target reset, you can essentially single target reset that 1 enemy indefinitely, and the whole while your intelligence character with this starfish wand is just restoring focus to your entire team until everybody's at full focus. As Sheldon said, this is a massive economic boon. You no longer have to meditate. You don't have to spend the money for it. You can just basically fill your entire party's focus pool by just attacking 1 enemy and literally resetting it with a talent hero, and just play with it as long as you want until you have full focus. It's incredible.
Yeah, another economic thing about it is, for you guys who may not be aware, focus is very similar to Golden Root, obviously, because it does focus. Focus, same thing as a Dancing Nettle. If you burn let's say you're pipe level 1, I think a Dancing Nettle does either 3 or 4 movement. If you burn 3 focus for 3 extra movement, that's the same thing as a Dancing Nettle. So you can use Starfish Staff kind of like 3 Dancing Nettles. You burn the focus for movement, use move, fight something, restore your focus back, and then you're basically getting free dancing nettles. You can use it as a dead lotus. Not a dead lotus, a hermit grass, which is the ambush that Mike was telling you about. You can do free ambushes, which is basically very similar to hermit's grass. So there's a lot of herbs that actually could that can be done using focus, which is kind of interesting as well.
Yeah, and that
Starfish staff is a must find.
Yeah.
I am always looking for starfish staff in every town.
and these guys, just so for the sake of time, is that they're just hitting the tip of the iceberg of what you can do with this in combination with other type of rush weapons and all that. So we've got a lot of other strats to talk about, but that kind of gives you guys an opportunity to get a feel for why some of these utilities are just so powerful. And if you do guys have questions about what else maybe you guys can do with the starfish staff, I mean, feel free to join us on Discord. We'd be happy to kind of answer those questions and go even into a deeper discussion about what you can do with Focus Restore. But let's kind of move on from this point forward, because we've got some really big stuff we need to talk about.
Yeah, if you thought Starfish Staff is OP, you haven't seen anything yet.
I do want to say one more thing before we move off of this slide. I want to talk about the Mage's Tome and the Thunder Tome for a moment.
Sure.
Okay. The reason the Mage Tome is here is because it has single target rush. If you were not able to get a rush weapon from, the tier 1 and the tier 2, now's your time to pick up the rush weapon. Same thing with the Thunder Tome. At the end of the game, when you get into Vexor's Tower, you're going to want to have a weapon that can shock the Fire Revenant. And this Thunder Tome has the ability to shock the entire group. So it's something that you're going to want to pick up and essentially using it for late game in Vexor's Tower. But here's the point that I want to make, though. There are better versions of these weapons in later tiers. So, the Thunder Tome is going to end up getting improved by a tier 5 Lightning Tome or tier 4 Lightning Tome. So do I pick it up or do I wait until that later tier and hope that I get it later on? But here's the point that I want to make. When you get to tier 3 is occurring after the 15-round town refresh. So you exited the Glittering Mines, you had 15 rounds. After that 15 rounds, the town's refreshed, and now you have these tier 3 weapons available to you in those 5 towns. The good news is those 5 towns will no longer refresh. So that Mage's Tome is going to be there in the town that you find it in until the very end of the game. Same thing with the Thunder Tome. It's going to be in that town, available to be purchased all the way to the end of the game. So yes, I do want to get a weapon that could do a group shock, but I'm not necessarily locked into having to get this Thunder Tome. I could go ahead and take the risk that I could find that Lightning Tome later on. And if I don't, I could always come back to this town later on and buy it when I need it. So really all I'm trying to do from the tier 3 weapons is I'm trying to get that Starfish Staff, because that is the one weapon that's going to give me an improvement over anything else that's available. All these other weapons, though, Fire Staff, if I've already got Goat Wizard Staff, I don't need Fire Staff. If I've already got a single target rush weapon, I don't really need Mage's Tome. And I do want to get a Thunder Tome, but I can wait on that. So I just want to point that out as well, that these weapons will always be available to you in those 5 towns for the rest of the game once you get to the tier 3.
I'm really glad that you brought that up, and that this is the other aspect to Intel that we're kind of starting to talk about here. Look at all the utility, all the different weapons we're talking about that are valuable in different scenarios. Like, we're not even getting into tier 4 weapons yet. We're talking about how big Thunder Tome can be to attack the Fire Revenant and have that in your back pocket. So if you absolutely need to take the balloon and float over to Cecily's Watch and pick this up at the end of the game because you weren't able to get, the higher tiered weapon, this is still going to be pretty powerful for you. You got Rush. You've got Focus Restore stuff. Like the Intel, I feel, is the absolute backbone to your team. And it's like, if you don't run an Intel, it's not that you can't win the game, but you're really making it difficult on yourself because there's just so much good stuff with Intel.
This is particularly true to tier 4 because there's one particular weapon that is just broken as all hell, very easy to get. If you don't have intelligence, the intelligence hero, you can't even use this weapon. But we'll talk about that once we reach it.
Yes. So let's kind of go on to these. I don't think we need to spend a whole heck of a lot of time on these. Again, sword spell. It's just a 20 damage weapon that does piercing. Nothing really too fancy with that particular weapon. It's just a high damage weapon. If you've been really unlucky at this point and haven't been able to get some of these other good weapons that we've been talking about, that's unfortunate. Orb of Infinite Gaze. Okay, 20 damage. Book of Healing. Honestly, I don't think I've ever bought this unless I still have not been able to get a party heal weapon up at this point.
It's usually the latest time that you can get party heal. If you delay it any more than Book of Healing, you usually will lose the game or have no Godspears.
You want to have party heal going into the King's Maze.
Yes.
So this is probably your last chance.
If you're desperate, this is your last chance to get a party heal going into the King's Maze.
Yeah.
Exactly right. And then you've got Jade Staff, 20 damage, Reflect, like all this kind of stuff. Nothing really all that great. To kind of round that out, you got the Wand of Protection. It's another party heal weapon. Council players can't get this. It does do 16 damage. Again, nothing really that you care about too much. If you absolutely need party heal, that's probably why you're picking this thing up. And then Gilded Tome.
One intelligence weapon that's garbage is that one.
Gilded Tome, yeah.
Yeah.
So
that one.
So we just put it on this slideshow just to rip on it. That was the only reason why we put it on here.
Yeah.
Okay. So then, of course, we spent a lot of time kind of already talking about these weapons. I had a very interesting discussion with Sheldon actually about this, and Mike already alluded to this about the difference between like Starfish Staff and Goat Wizard Staff. And like if I get Goat Wizard Staff, I've never even thought of buying Starfish Staff, and I do want to like make this point clear. So buying Starfish Staff is around 90 gold. And I was like, why would you spend 90 gold when you got Goat Wizard Staff compared to Starfish Staff? And he pretty much said, if you use the Focus Restore 3 times, you pretty much just got all your money back, and you can do all these other cheesy things, and it's a more powerful weapon, even though it's only by 1, So even if you have Goat Wizard Staff, you would definitely upgrade to Starfish Staff if you could.
You know, there's one other thing about that Starfish Staff we haven't even mentioned that just makes this weapon so unbelievable. It does 25% extra damage against water enemies. There are clams and there are crabs in the game that you can run into, and both of those enemies, they either eat your gear, destroy your gear. They do things that you don't want to have happen, and this thing can literally one-shot them with its power-up attack. So it really helps you against enemies that you really hate to encounter that mess with your team. So it provides you with refocus ability. So if you really wanted to play with that monk or that herbalist, and you wanted to have that refocus ability that the scholar had built in, Starfish Staff, you throw it on them, and suddenly you got your scholar's ability right there with that character. So it's just everything about it is amazing. I couldn't believe that they threw all that overpowered stuff onto one weapon. It was unbelievable.
Well, yeah.
By the way, the Fire Staff, don't discount the Fire Staff's firewall ability to do single target reset. When we talked about using a talent hero who could single target reset while you're using your intelligence hero to Starfish Staff and focus restore your entire party, you can literally do it flip-flopped. You can have your intelligence hero doing the single target reset and your talent hero using like a ukulele to focus restore your team. It's not as effective, but it still works. So don't discount that Fire Staff's firewall ability to single target reset.
Yeah, and I do want to make this point, is Scholar is by far the best hero to be running for intelligence. Don't not pick up this weapon because it's a redundant refocus. Like, that's kind of an irrelevant point. Like, don't sit there and go, well, then I would just rather have Goat Wizard Staff because I'm not getting another like layer of refocus. Take that out of your mind. It's just if you are running herbalist and you are running monk, this is another
Even better.
layer on top of this that makes it even better. And then, but the one thing that's really nice though about just like looking at the best of the best for going in the King's Maze is this is why we talk about if you do have a side quest right off the start to be able to get Goat Wizard Staff, that's pretty much just right after the Glittering Mines. You do have a weapon now that can carry you all the way through to King's Maze. This does so if you don't get Starfish Staff, don't be disappointed. Having Goat Wizard Staff is amazing all the way through. We just feel that that's just like another upgrade if you are able to get that in tier 3. Anything else you guys want to add to the King's Maze?
The Mage's Tome has single target rush, so it makes it into the top 4 for the best available because it has the largest amount of damage that can pierce because it has an ignore resistance pierce, and it has the chance to rush. So if you have found a very powerful strength weapon for your strength hero, like the Iron Anchor, going into that King's Maze, you can actually rush that individual over and over to just do huge amounts of damage.
All right. So you guys ready to move on to the tier 4?
Yep.
Okay. I'm going to do something a little different than I have been in all of these videos. I talk a lot right at the start on each one of these slides. The Volcanic Tome, I would say, is just Sheldon's bread and butter and just absolutely loves this weapon. Why don't you go ahead and talk about this particular weapon and why you feel it's so powerful and why is it so reliable in terms of being able to get it?
I want to first state that I think that there is such a thing as playing Master casually. One reason I can play casual Master without any worry is because this weapon exists at all. So with that out of the way, the reason I don't fear anything is that I know that this weapon exists and I can get it very easily. What this weapon does is it has a particular skill called Firewall, which does a group party reset. Basically, what that means is, like normal reset, every single enemy, they will be deleted on the timeline. So that basically, if you spam that skill, the enemy will hardly ever get to attack you. The only time the enemy will attack you is if they're actually faster than your scholar at that point. So basically what happens is when you get into the Act 3 and you have to do Demon Caves, the 2 Demon Caves you have to do are probably the most dangerous dungeons in the game other than Tower that will shred you if you can't prevent damage. Because every single attack you take in a Demon Cave will rip your character's health by just a massive amount. You would have to eat Godspears like candy if you are unable to prevent damage or limit damage as much as possible. Volcanic Tome actually allows you to just not take damage, period, while your other 2 characters kill off the enemy group. It's so awesome. Anything you want to add to that, Mike, before I ramble on?
Yes, the Volcanic Tome is only one of 2 weapons in the entire game that has the ability to do a full party reset. The other one being from the talent group, which was the Royal Bow, which is a Royal Loot, sorry, which is a tier 5 weapon that you don't get until very late in the game. This weapon, as Sheldon said, is extremely easy to get. It has a 50% chance to drop to you as a reward for completing the King's Maze. So it's really, really easy to get. And not on top of that, after you leave the King's Maze, when you go to any of the towns in the final 2 biomes, if you do the remove chaos side quest from those towns, it will spawn a fire priestess camp. And that fire priestess also gives you another 50% chance to have this weapon just drop to you as a reward. And there are 4 towns. So you literally end up with 5 chances to have a 50% coin flip to get this weapon to you. It's so easy to get. Like Sheldon says, it makes it playing his games casually because he knows he's probably going to get this weapon pretty much every single time. It has burn immunity, so it helps you going through the demon caves. And as he said, if you're able to group reset the entire enemy, the only time the enemy's going to hit you is if they're faster than your scholar. Well, your scholar's already got 70 speed, so that means the enemies have to be faster than 70 speed. If you give this volcanic tome to your scholar, but on top of that, you give some speed to your scholar as well. For example, if you had the Time Lord in your game and you killed the Time Lord and you got the Golden Hourglass as the reward, the Golden Hourglass is a trinket that gives you plus 10 speed. If you slap that onto your scholar and now your scholar has 80 speed, he's likely going to be outspeeding almost every enemy you encounter. So as soon as you walk into the battle, your scholar goes first, he resets the enemy, and they never hit you. You can get through the entire battle and never get touched.
Yeah.
You completely eliminated all damage that comes to you. The only thing that it requires is that you can spend focus to keep it going, because the firewall requires 5 roll checks and it's at a minus 15% accuracy. So at a minimum, you have to spend 2 focus to eliminate the accuracy, the 50% penalty on the accuracy, giving you 3 roll checks at your intelligence stat. So you kind of want your scholar to have about 90 intelligence or greater, so that those final 3 roll checks are at 90%, 90%, 90%. You have a very, very good chance of getting that firewall to go off every single time. And it makes it so that every combat is basically no damage coming to you at all. The enemy never gets a chance to do it. They just stand there and watch as you kill them. It's unbelievable.
And that's where you can use like a combination where we talked about, like, if you on PC, this doesn't work as well on console. I mean, if you do have the ukulele, you could even play the ukulele to get the 2 restore focus. So then you can make sure that you're not using a ton of golden roots into the demon cave if you absolutely wanted to. So then you're just sitting there resetting the entire time, restoring your focus with the ukulele. You can then just have your strength hero just kind of beat up everybody as you just kind of keep doing that over and over and over again. It also does have an extra portion of the ability too, which is the damage against ice. Now, if you've watched Sheldon kind of run through this like a billion different times, you couple that with the armor video that we talked about as having the volcanic hat, and then if you're lucky to get the ice talisman, you can sit there, put a Hildebrand's Reserve, and then just do the Great Firestorm attack, and you just melt the Ice Revenant. Like, I think it just takes like 2 attacks and it's pretty much over at that point. So that's another component to the volcanic tome.
Yeah, 2 shot. Yeah, it's really disgusting.
Yeah. The 50% damage against ice, you throw either a Hildebrand's Reserve to boost that by another 100%, or you throw on the volcanic hat from that Scourge if you found him in your game, which also does 100% damage against ice. Yeah, you come into the Ice Revenant in the tower and you use the Greater Firestorm. That Greater Firestorm will completely one-shot the 2 henchmen on the sides and leave the Ice Revenant down to 1-shot range. So all it takes is 1 more hit and he's gone. You just it completely eliminated that group in just 2 shots. It's amazing.
All right, so of course we're gonna probably circle back on this weapon here in a little bit. So this is what you can get right out of tier 4, which is an amazing weapon. Like, it's just fantastic.
It's very likely to be the very first tier 4 weapon you see, period, of any class.
Yes, and
would be that.
And it is, I would debate, and I think Sheldon, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, it's the best weapon in the game.
Yeah. Hands down.
Best weapon in the game.
There is another weapon that can be more powerful than Volcanic Tome, though it's a little bit more reliant on another character helping it out.
Sure.
Volcanic Tome can do what it does by itself. No other character will influence this weapon at all, which is awesome. This is why it's the best weapon in the game.
So this standalone.
It's a standalone, yeah.
Standalone, it's the best weapon in the game.
Yeah, all by itself, that weapon wins you the game. Just give it to a scholar, give some extra speed to that scholar, and that weapon will win you the game all by itself.
It's pretty much it's a freebie at that point.
Yeah.
As long as you have the intelligence stat to actually do the firewall, yeah, it's pretty much a free win at that point.
But moving on, though, the lightning wand is second because you are going to want some kind of shock capabilities going into Vexor's tower to deal with the fire revenant, and the lightning wand is a very powerful lightning shocking weapon that you can get in tier 4. So if you did not see that thunder tome from tier 3, and this is the first opportunity to pick up a shocking weapon, then it's definitely something you're going to want to pick up. In addition to the volcanic tome, you actually want them both in your back pocket so that you can actually use something like a lightning wand against the fire revenant in the tower.
Yeah, also too, now just to kind of keep going down the list, Obsidian Wand just does a ton of damage. So if you're able to pump a bunch of focus into that death ray, again, at this point, and Sheldon made this apparent in one of the previous videos, is even though the base damage says it's at 21, well, you're usually at around maybe level 10 now. You probably have some other potential, like the diamond, the amplified diamond, where you can actually increase your actual attack on it. Also give you an 8% crit chance. This gives you a 10% crit chance. Sheldon went into a good explanation, Sheldon and Mike talking about crit chance, which was even still confusing to me after they talked about it. But pretty much if you really, really highly increase your crit chance, it gives you an opportunity to do a ton of damage. And on top of it too, if you had it at a super high level, it'll like help you give you perfect rolls, where the death ray, if you're at that point, even though you're worried about the minus 60% accuracy, that crit chance helps you get through those rolls easier if maybe you only use like 2 or 3 focus points. The Wizard's Tome is an upgrade to the previous tome that we talked about that had single target rush. This allows you to do 21 damage piercing. And anything that you guys want to add before we kind of roll through the rest of these tier 4 weapons?
You know, the reason we keep highlighting these weapons that have single target rush is because you actually want to partner that with the golden loot from the talent class. The golden loot had the ability to party rush. So your talent hero rushes your intelligence hero and your strength hero. If your intelligence hero can rush that talent hero back, he can then rush the party again. And so talent hero rushes the intelligence hero and the strength hero. Intelligence hero rushes that talent hero again, and he's able to keep repeating that. Every time you do that combination, the strength hero, who's in between all of that, is getting free actions to attack. So you party rush the party rusher. Party rush again, rush the party rusher. Every single time you do that, that strength hero is getting a free chance to attack, and the enemy can't do anything about it. So the reason why we keep highlighting these single target rush weapons is just in case when you get to tier 5, you're able to find that golden loot for the talent hero, which I called the god loot from the previous episode.
Well, Mike is correct. We are mostly wanting rush for that nice partnership with golden loot. Even if you can't get golden loot, rush by itself is still an amazing ability. Don't discredit using rush because you're not going, like, if you're not running talent but you're running intelligence, which means you're not going to be able to use golden loot, don't not buy rush weapons. They're still going to be very useful to you.
All right, so let's kind of get through these handful of weapons here in tier 4. So the polished staff, if you made it through King's Maze without
party heal,
congratulations to you. You're a master of the masters, which Sheldon actually again did a run with no Godsbeard, so he probably didn't even need party heal. But if you made it to that point, but if you haven't gotten a party heal weapon at this point, pick this up, please. Like, or
before
don't.
Before the demon caves shred you.
Yeah, because the demon caves. Yeah, if you don't have a volcanic tome and don't have a fast volcanic tome user, those demon caves are going to shred you. So you better have your party heal ready to go.
Yeah. So, but I think this actually. I know this sounds bad, but I actually do want to circle back to awareness weapons, because I know poor awareness weapons got just absolutely crapped on during this entire weapon series. But this is what's so fascinating looking at Intel. look at the weapons even that we have in tier 4 at 6, 7, and 8. Like these weapons do 30, 27, 28. Again, the awareness can't even out damage what this intel can do. And we're not even really necessarily worried about these weapons because we're looking at the very high end, like utility part of intel. But if you want to, you can get some pretty high powered weapons to be able to do some pretty nasty attacks. You wouldn't necessarily are going out of your way to get the great frost staff, but if like it drops to you and you've been a little unlucky with like the volcanic tome and you have that weapon to actually fight these like fire priestess camps, it's good to have those weapons to be able to do at least really good damage output so you can beat up those guys pretty easily if you haven't been able to get some of those higher powered weapons. So it's not necessarily that you are upset that you've gotten those weapons. It's just that you're hoping to use these to get the volcanic tome and other very high utility weapons.
Yeah. By the way, the polished staff is not here at slot number 5 because of the party heal. It's actually here because of the single target rush.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
Like single target rush, any rush at all, super important to have.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm glad you clarified that. Because yes, if I'm not valuing it at party heal, but it's just kind of funny if you are looking forward for party heal at this point.
Yeah.
As we kind of keep moving on, again, it's kind of the same thing. You start seeing this drop off. One thing that I do want to highlight, I guess, 2 highlights. Number 12, the Iron Tome. Again, the worst probably tier 4 weapon. Like it's just absolutely awful. But the Glacier Tome. Now the Glacier Tome, this is absolutely amazing. So the 50-50 shot of what Mike was talking about is you either get the Glacier Tome or the Volcanic Tome. The Glacier Tome is pretty weak in terms of where we value it. I mean, you will probably equip it because it's better than like the Goat Wizard Staff, like when you get out of King's Maze. So you would still equip it. It's a slight upgrade, but it's definitely not that great of a weapon in tier 4. There's definitely a lot better weapons than this particular weapon.
I'm not even sure it's better than the Goat Wizard Staff because the Goat Wizard Staff has a heavy attack and the Glacier Tome does not. So sometimes it kind of depends whether or not I actually want to use that Glacier Tome or keep running with that Goat Wizard Staff. That's why it's so low on the list.
All right. Anything else you guys want to say before we go on to the tier 5?
Before we go to tier 5, all these weapons from 2 to 12, very likely all of those are going to be irrelevant once you get V-Tome. Once you get V-Tome, all this, just throw it down the trash can. The Great Lightning Staff is a really great weapon, but if you already have the Volcanic Tome, you're not going to be using it in battle. Yeah, right. Like the only time these weapons actually have some light is in other modes where V-Tome is not as common.
Sure.
Yeah.
Or if you're running with 2 intelligence heroes on your team, so one of them uses the Volcanic Tome, and then somebody else can use one of these other weapons.
Right. That's another good point. If you're running 2 intelligence, then these will see.
By the way, 2 intelligence heroes does work. You can run a scholar, and a gladiator. And one of those uses the Volcanic Tome, the other one uses the Starfish Staff and keeps giving him focus to keep doing that firewall over and over and over. Meanwhile, your gladiator just pounds everything to death. Works really good.
And there's another avenue of talking about the Starfish Staff, right? You just used another combination. In fact, like you can use some of these, like Starfish Staff. Does it take 2 checks or 3 checks to do that, to do restore focus?
Only 2 checks to do the calm restore focus from the Starfish Staff.
So here's an interesting part. You could use Starfish Staff on your talent hero, use it double focused, because it doesn't matter what the actual intelligence stat is.
That's right.
Pump it up on your Volcanic Tome, and then just eventually just restore your own focus while you're just kind of waiting around not doing anything because he keeps resetting everybody. So
you use 2 focus on the Volcanic Tome to get a reset. You use 2 focus on your talent hero who's actually fully focusing that Starfish Staff to restore 4 focus, right? So you can actually just keep going in combination. He can restore himself, then he can restore the scholar, then he can restore himself, then he can restore the scholar, and you can keep them both going because you're doing 4 focus each time.
Mm-hmm. All right, so let's get into the tier 5 weapons. Right at the very top, Tome of Wonder. Now, this is what Sheldon was alluding to in terms of the golden loot paired with one other weapon. Tome of Wonder and those 2 weapons combined, standalone Volcanic Tome is the best. But Tome of Wonder combined with golden loot is just amazing. It's almost kind of like when you get those weapons, I yawn because I'm like, this is going to be so easy going into the end game here. So what this particular weapon does is target party rush here. So what that means is he'll rush your strength hero and your talent hero. Your talent hero moves up, then rushes your intel and your strength hero. Your strength hero just got 2 extra turns. And then they just do this back and forth, back and forth. And you use pretty much like 2 focus points. Even if you whiff on one, you're usually okay because it happens. And then it's okay because you get all these extra turns. You end up just keep pushing this back and forth, and you literally never give the enemy a turn to attack.
Yeah, it creates an infinite time loop that the enemy will never get to go. All it requires is the ability to rush your party and then rush that person who rushed the party, and you have an infinite time loop. Tome of Wonder is one of only 3 weapons in the entire game that have that ability to rush the party. The golden loot being one of those from the talent. So yeah, this is one of those weapons that you're really looking for because all you need is to get that weapon and then have any other character have the ability to rush, whether that be single target rush or party rush, and you can create an infinite time loop. So yeah, it's one of those weapons that if you see it, it's like, oh.
And
Game over.
The reason we call it an infinite time loop, one, the enemies can never attack you. Excuse me. But another is another added bonus that Rush does, other than the enemy can never hit you, is all condition-based things, either buffs or debuffs. They never go away because attack up, bleed, death mark, anything, they wear off over time as the timeline moves. But technically, the timeline doesn't move when you're rushing. It just stays frozen in place. Usually the timeline slowly goes over to the left as characters disappear. But when you're rushing, you're actually adding fake turns that are in front of all the real turns. So all the real turns are still on the timeline. And since tick-based conditions are off of real characters moving through the timeline, you can actually attack up your party, which the golden loot can do, by the way. The golden loot can not only does party rush, but can also attack up. You can attack up, and then the attack up will never wear off, ever. You can also drink a Hillebrands for 100% damage bonus, and instead of getting 2 uses of Hillebrands like you normally would, you now get an infinite amount of Hillebrands usage because of the infinite time loop. Another thing is all the negative debuffs like burning and bleeding. Yeah, those conditions technically stay on you forever, but the actual tick of the damage never goes off. So yeah, you'll be burning forever, but you won't actually take burn damage, which is interesting.
Yeah. So the rush group ability on the Tome of Wonder is a 4-check ability at a minus 10% accuracy. So it will probably require spending 2 focus to make sure that the rush goes off. So in order to continue that infinite time loop, you're going to have some way of continuing the focus for a while. So it helps to stock up on golden roots and precious pearls from sea caves, so they have a lot of focus available so that you can use that rush for a long period of time, because otherwise you will slowly run out of focus and it may eventually will start to wear down and fail if you don't continue to feed the focus that it wants.
Yeah, so let's kind of move on with the rest of these right now. The Wand of Death is just a very powerful just attack weapon.
Yeah, Death
it-
Ray.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's really fun to kind of watch that thing in action. It does take, a lot of focus to be able to do that particular attack. You can run through certain attacks pretty easily. Lightning Tome. Lightning Tome is the one that you kind of really want for the end game in terms of the Fire Revenant. You literally aren't buying this for any other reason, but you want to buy it. And this goes back to the thing that Mike said earlier, is if for some reason the other Lightning Tome, it's not called the Lightning Tome, can't remember what it was called. Thank you. The Thunder Tome. You could, if you don't get access to the Lightning Tome in Tier 5, you could always take the balloon over to pick up the Tier 4 one. But you definitely want to be able to shock the Fire Revenant. Pretty much when you shock the Fire Revenant and his 2 side minions, they literally do nothing to you. But you want to keep making sure you shock them. So you just equip this weapon for that one particular fight, but it's incredibly powerful to have this particular weapon for that fight. You wouldn't really use this for anything else. And then the Great Water Tome is a very good focus restore weapon. This is the one bonus for being on console. The one bonus for being on console. They actually nerf this on PC. So it's better on console than it is for PC right now. So you console players, you actually get more restore focus out of it. I believe it's 4 for the entire party. And I think they nerfed it down to 3, if I'm not mistaken, for the PC, or do I have that wrong?
You have
it reversed.
You have it, everything you said is completely backwards. So it's they buffed it.
So sorry, console players. You get 3 focus restore for your party on console, but you get 4 focus restore from PC.
Yeah.
They actually buffed it. I can't believe they buffed it. Now, by the way, Great Water Tome is a broken weapon because it's giving 4 focus restore to your entire party. Everybody gets 4 focus. So the ability called Party Calm 3 is a 4 focus check. It's a 4 roll check. You could fully focus it and get it all right back again. So you can infinitely keep your party at 100% focus. If you pair that with the Rush, so yeah, you got Tome of Wonder and maybe the Golden Loot, and then you have somebody else who can run this. He doesn't even need to know intelligence. He just has to have a 4 focus pool. He just spends 4 focus, restores focus to everybody else. Everybody else can just keep rushing. You could actually go and create for yourself an infinite Hildebrandt Cellar run, where you can go room after room after room after room in an infinite in Hildebrandt Cellar. If you can have 2 party rush weapons with this guy in the middle restoring focus to everybody. He restores focus once and he attacks, and then rush. Restores focus once and then attacks, and then rush. And you can do that infinitely. It's a broken weapon.
Oh man.
Yeah, it's basically Starfish Staff on steroids.
It's Starfish Staff on super steroids.
Super steroids. Is what that is, yeah.
I just love that I said it in reverse because I actually thought it was the other way around. But you know what?
When would console ever get a boost?
Yeah.
Don't get me started on the console and developers. Don't let's not go down that rabbit hole right now. I would love to see the DLC dropped on console. Hopefully at some point they'll throw us a bone, something. Maybe we can get something soon, but we'll see what happens. All right. So kind of rounding these out, I think at this point it's pretty much a big drop off. I don't think I've ever even cared to purchase the Tome of Storms.
Well,
Chaotic
Tome of
Staff.
Tome of Storms is here because it can do that lightning, that shock for the Fire Revenant. So if you didn't find Thunder Tome or you didn't find Lightning Tome, then you could grab Tome of Storms to shock the Fire Revenant.
Real quick, talking about the Fire Revenant one last time here.
Mhm.
You definitely want shock going into the Fire Revenant. When it comes to talent and strength and awareness, those shock weapons are usually just a single target. There are actually 4 group shock weapons in intelligence. One of them being Thunder Tome, one of them being Orb of Infinite Gaze, one of them being Tome of Storms, and then the other one being Lightning Tome. So you actually That's another reason intelligence is OP. You're very likely to get one of the 4 party shock weapons that you need for Fire Revenant as well.
That's a good point. That's why sometimes, though, if I'm able to get that shock orb or whatever as an item, I do just hold on to it because it's nice to just be able to cast it and you know it's going to hit everything. And that also really cripples them as well, too. If you get just like somehow you forgot to buy one of these weapons or something, it's nice to be able to do that, too. Okay, so let's kind of just round this thing out. Let's get into Vexor's Tower here, because there's actually still a couple more points that I wanted to talk about, a few things, and I want to go back to the Tome of Wonder here for a second. So, of course, the Volcanic Tome, as we had mentioned, it's the best standalone weapon, and that's why you just absolutely want this weapon to go into it. 1, it can crush the Ice Revenant, but number 2, it can pretty much reset all these different stages as you're going up the tower, and it can also do it to Vexor himself. And this is just a really great weapon to have. With Tome of Wonder combined with the Golden Loot, pretty much what you would be doing this is using this 3 out of the 4 stages, or 3 out of the 5 stages. Sorry about that. Because you're going to use the lightning on the Fire Revenant, and you're going to use the Volcanic Tome on the Ice Revenant, because you don't necessarily want to do rush. You can just power through everything with the Volcanic Tome there. But here's an element to understanding the game a little bit. In order to do Tome of Wonder and Golden Loot, you do need to have consumables to be able to do this easier. So you're going to be using 2 focus quite a bit. So you want to make sure you do have pearls from the sea caves heading into Vexor's Tower, so you can do these without sweating any bullets at all. If you make sure you have about 4 or 5 pearls heading into the cave, probably about like 2 to 3 golden roots spread across your entire team, and being able to handful of Hildebrandt's reserves for your strength hero, also for your intel hero when he attacks the Ice Revenant. This allows for you to easily be able to do these like high level tactics that allow you to get hit not at all. I mean, I've gone through the tower with literally using 1 God's Beard because I had all the golden roots and pearls and these weapons, and I just never got touched. So that's kind of the one main point I wanted to make sure that people understand, is that I think a lot of people may go into Vexor's Tower, think they have these weapons, and think, well, this is a lock. And what they do is they have no golden roots, and they never went into any sea caves, and they find out that they're constantly missing being able to do these abilities, because when we talk about a minus 10% accuracy, even though you're at 90 and you don't use any focus, doing a 4-check 80 is going to be, you're going to miss it a ton if you do the math on it. What you do is you want to use at least 2 focus, and it gives you like a 90% chance that you're going to hit it, a 95% chance. And that's the realm you want to do, but you want to make sure you're properly prepared going into the tower.
Yeah, that's a good point with both V-Tome and Tome of Wonder. Yeah, they're great abilities, but you got to make sure you can focus them for them to go off. Another thing I want to add specifically about V-Tome, for the most part, yes, V-Tome is a standalone weapon that works for pretty much any fight in the game. However, V-Tome is weakest in Tower, specifically because the Fire Revenant and the Lightning Revenant, those 2 fights, which are back-to-back, by the way, those 2 groups are incredibly fast. They are so fast that even if you reset them, they all 3 of them will hit you anyways. So V-Tome probably won't actually help enough against those 2 fights. You're probably better off using Tome of Wonder or any other weapon. Hell, even Wand of Death might be better than V-Tome for those 2 particular fights in particular. Just wanted to add that in.
Yeah.
For sure.
When I get to this stage of the game or going into the tower, I actually want Volcanic Tome in my back pocket. I want Lightning Tome in my back pocket. I want Tome of Wonder in my back pocket. I want all of these.
Yeah, you switch between them in the.
It's not like I'm buying one and going into the tower with just one of these. I want them all.
Yeah, because you do swap between them as you go through.
Yes.
Yeah, the only one I could probably go into the tower without is probably Wand of Death, but I want the other 3. I definitely want the other 3. Especially if Volcanic Tome is great against the Ice Revenant, It's great for Vexor himself, and it's also good for the first group as you enter the tower. But it's not like Sheldon said, it's not so great for the Fire Revenant or the Lightning Revenant because they are too fast. They actually outspeed your ability to reset. And that's where the Tome of Wonder comes in. If you have the ability to rush this person with the Tome of Wonder and you create that infinite time loop, it doesn't matter how fast they are, they will never get a chance to go. So the Tome of Wonder is really the safest way of getting through the tower.
Yeah, Rush has always been the best time manipulation tactic. That tactic is definitely stronger than V-Tome, but again, it does require having 2 weapons for that to work. So even though we have V-Tome as number 1, it's not necessarily the best for everything.
So leading up to this last video here, we've been pointing out every single target rush weapon in the game, because at the end of the game, you want somebody who gets one of these 3 party rush weapons and then one other guy who can single target rush that party rusher. So you got to pick up that single target rush weapon somewhere along the way. Both your talent character needs a single target rush weapon, and your intelligence character needs a single target rush weapon.
With
because
that,
you won't know until they get to the end of the game whether you're going to find the Tome of Wonder or you're going to find the golden loot. And if you can find both, then you know you're golden.
It's very interesting you state that. Daddio, can you go to the next slide? Okay.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this
Goblin Staff is the other one weapon of the 3 that has the ability to rush group. And yeah, you find it during Act 1 from a little, goblin who you probably fight while you're in the glittering mines or something like that, and people go, it's a crappy weapon, it can only do 4 damage, and they sell it or they throw it away. I'm like, oh my god, no, you didn't just sell the rush group weapon. Are you crazy? This is a weapon that you would literally hold in your back pocket the entire game until you get to the end. And once you get to the end and you have all those precious pearls from those sea caves to feed the focus that it needs, then you start doing your infinite time loop.
Goblin Staff is Tome of Wonder.
It's the same thing as Tome of Wonder.
Yeah.
All you're going to use it for is the party rush.
That's what's so amazing about this is this is why we talked about the abilities. Did you notice a major shift we had talking about King's Maze intel and now Vexor's intel? We talked about damage output, being able to kill King's Maze, doing that quickly, and this major shift we had to abilities. We haven't even talked about how much damage output these weapons even do. And on top of it too, we're highlighting at the very end a 4 damage AoE breakable piece of crap weapon. But it's not a piece of crap because it has party rush. And what's so fantastic is because I've learned so much over playing this. The other day, I was going through a Frost adventure, ended up getting Goblin Staff, knowing that you don't get these tier 5 weapons. You don't get Tome of Wonder at the end of the game. You actually cannot access it. But I put this in my back pocket, literally did all my focus going up the mountain with those special weapons, then switched to Goblin Staff with my single target rush with my talent hero and just kept infinite looping, and that dragon never hit me once. It's all the same stuff. If you can, this goes back to everything that we've been saying throughout these entire videos. Big thing is crush things hard. Don't let them attack. And the 2 ways to do that is timeline manipulation and being able to do a ton of damage to eliminate them. And this is why, I know it may sound bad to some of you beginning players that talk about how good taunt is and how good it is to, be able to use that blacksmith steadfast. Ultimately, that's going to get you killed over time. What you want to do is make sure you're taking the fight to them, not allowing them to attack and destroying them. This is what we've been harping on for so long, and this is what Sheldon and Mike are out here doing, just trying to make sure you guys have this top-notch information so you can beat this game easily.
Daddio had a good point, though, that when you're going into the King's Maze, you don't have Volcanic Tome, you don't have Tome of Wonder. So going into the King's Maze, your best bet is to go high damage, high powered intelligence weapons, like the Starfish Staff, like the Goat Wizard Staff. But once you exit from the King's Maze, you suddenly get these unbelievably good support weapons like the Volcanic Tome and the Tome of Wonder. And so the talent heroes function completely changes from being someone who's doing as much damage as they possibly can to somebody who's literally trying to prevent the enemy from it touching you by resetting them or rushing your heroes. So yeah, it's a complete flip from what you were doing halfway through the game.
So this is a massive topic, and I want to thank. Go ahead, Sheldon. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was about to say with when you're playing the Scholar or any intelligence hero for that matter, you end up having that character be damage. Then he becomes hybrid, which is damage and support, and then he becomes support. Like he literally changes his roles as the game progresses, going from damage to hybrid to support entirely, which is very interesting.
Yeah, that hybrid, for example, is the Starfish Staff, where he's doing high damage with the Starfish Staff and then potentially focus restore at certain points along the way. So he's doing like a little bit of a hybrid there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then once you get V-Tome and Tome of Wonder, then you become pure support.
Mhm.
You rarely attack. You hardly only attack if he happens to be
The final blow.
Like the final, exactly. If he happens to have the final blow, then he attacks. But like, yeah.
Anything that you guys would like to add before we conclude this whole thing up right now?
I think we covered it.
I guess just one. Yeah, I guess just one little note.
Sure.
Why we show non-staff here. Pretty much any weapon in the game for both intelligence and talent, if it has rush, it doesn't matter how much damage it does. Rush is rush. So if you don't have rush, and the only way you can get rush is by backtracking to a tier 1 town for whatever reason and getting decent loot, pick it up. Like, if you don't have a rush weapon for whatever reason, it doesn't matter what tier the rush weapon is, just snag it.
Yep.
So that you can
knotted staff with the golden loot from talent, and you have that infinite time loop.
Or decent loot. Decent loot and Gom Staff, which are both tier 1 weapons, by the way. Just saying.
I've actually seen Sheldon destroy Vexor with a goblin staff and a decent loot.
Yeah. Yeah, 2 tier 1s. Yeah.
All he needs is that infinite time loop, and then his strength hero is blasting away with an iron anchor. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. For free.
For free.
Well, I think this has been such a huge topic, and there was just so much information to pack into this. Thank you, Sheldon and Mike, so much for taking the time to put these videos together with me. This is just kind of like a personal thank you from me to you guys. The amount of work that gets put into these videos and the amount of research that is done, I don't think you guys fully understand what both Mike and Sheldon did behind the scenes. In fact, they put together the slides for like these last 3 videos, which I am so thankful for that they spent the time to do this. So my hat's off to you guys for taking the time to do all this. You guys have taken a beginning player and brought him up to a master level, and it's been such a fun ride for me to be able to go from trying to create content for beginning players and just bridging that gap from beginning players all the way to masters players. I, for one, have learned immensely from you guys, and I'm just so grateful that I've been able to get to the point that I am at. And I'm just glad I'm able to be on a platform to give people an opportunity to also get to the same points from where I was to where you guys are now. Now, I may not be able to do a speed run of an hour and 30 minutes, which Sheldon did the other day. I don't think I can ever get to that point. But I want to thank you guys from the bottom of my heart for all the work that you guys done with me. It's just been a pleasure working with you guys. But I'm not saying this because this is the last video we're doing together. This is just an epic topic that needed to be out there. And we're definitely going to be doing some more work together. You guys can join us on Discord, ask us as many questions as you guys want. Check out Sheldon's stream. Sheldon is fantastic with being able to help others out any questions that you want to dump in on Sheldon's stream, Sheldon will always answer those questions for you. And sometimes he'll just straight up give you the truth. It may not be the answer that you're hoping for, but he will drop you the knowledge of what is correct to make sure that your runs go smoothly, no matter if you're an apprentice level player, no matter if you're a journeyman level player or you're a master's level player. Thank you guys so much. Thank you for all the time that you guys have spent out there on YouTube of watching these videos. The comments that you guys have given us always gives us a little bit extra boost. It's always nice to hear that you guys have just increased your level of play a little bit here and there. Just the positive outpouring of support is always great to hear. Thank you guys so much. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day and week, and we will be back at it again. Take care, everyone.